Side note, before this video starts, I want to touch on some hilarious censorship between the original Japanese version versus what we got here in the English land of Canada. In the original script, when Runo goes through her character arc in the Doom Dimension, she learns the lesson not to be stubborn and listen to people. But also, she learns that she has feelings for Dan. She proclaims her love for him, and the world changes at her proclamation. In the English dub, they changed love to friends forever. So now it looks like Runo friendzones Dan so hard that the land turns apocalyptic.
We're friends forever, Dan! Friends forever! And nobody in this great big crazy world can change that! Nobody! You hear me?
Who is Masquerade? Bakugan had one of the biggest plot twists of my childhood. Back in July of 2007, the original Bakugan series aired on the Canadian television network called Teletoon for the first time, and I was blown away. The concept was very unique. An entire game centering around cards and marbles that pop open to reveal kaiju-sized monster was the coolest thing on the playground. Pokemon was for the grade 2 kids, but Bakugan, that was for the big kids. Creatures coming out of balls was our thing! As much as I would love to talk about the show as a whole, the English dub leaves a lot to be desired, to say the least.
The doctor's right, Shun. I'll be fine. You go home and Grandpa will look after you.
Bitch, you're supposed to be dead! However, I want to talk about one episode in particular. Episode 38, Behind the Mask of Masquerade. As much as the English dub has a lot of confusing translation mistakes and sometimes questionable voice acting, this episode is the gold standard and shows what Bakugan can truly be at its best. Join me as we dive into the narrative. To set some context, Masquerade first appeared in episode 2 and was established as one of the central antagonists of the series. They were a menace. They had something called the Doom card, which could send defeated Bakugan to the Shadow Realm, the Doom Dimension, and was basically Bakugan's version of Hell. And even to their own Bakugan, they're ruthless. They had a partner for a good long while named Reaper. When Hydronoid was introduced, they tossed Reaper into the Doom Dimension. Not to mention, they also have an ability card that negates the power boost from a gate card. It's considered absurd. I, however, play Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2024. I would kill for only one negate, man! I've rambled on about this for a while, but it needs to be said how powerful Masquerade is and how much of a challenge Dan, our main character, has for taking them down. This episode opens with one of the main characters, Alice, walking through a really foggy field and wondering how she got there. Now, Alice at this point in the series was the only member of the team who didn't actually play Bakugan. She was more the type to support the team in other ways. The fog dissipates to reveal that she's standing on a cliff overlooking the city, which by the way is called Wardington, which I find hilarious for some reason. Another member of the team, Runo, calls out to Alice and expresses that she's worried about her, and asks where she's been. With a sad look, Alice confesses that she doesn't know. She breaks down, saying she wishes that she could figure out what's going on. Runo takes Alice to her place and lays her down in bed, thinking she's just tired. Alice confesses that this isn't the first time this has happened. Runo asks the obvious question of, when has this happened before? Alice's response is shocking.
Well, I guess ever since I started playing Bakugan.
What? I'm sorry, but when did Alice start playing Bakugan? We've never seen her so much as open the field on screen before. Look, even Runo was shocked. To add more to it, she says,
It's like I don't know myself anymore. Wow.
This is strange. We've never seen Alice play Bakugan on screen before. And now she talks like she's been playing this whole time? What gives? That was unnecessary. Why would you show a dog slipping and falling? The scene shifts to Dan's house, with the news broadcast playing, talking about the crazy weather happening all over the world. Snow in July, a water geyser spouting out the Pyramid of Giza, and the Aurora Borealis appearing in the skies of New York. Side note, a little bit of context Past Josh forgot to add into the script, but another of the main antagonists, Naga, took control of something called the Silent Core in the center of the Bakugan homeworld of Astroya. And because the Infinity Core isn't with it, the Bakugan homeworld of Astroya is out of balance and collapsing in on itself. And it's also leaking into the real world. So that's why these strange weather phenomena are happening. The scene explains some of this to Dan's mom as well. She can kind of act like a vessel for the audience at times. Or, you know, the network thinks kids don't retain any info, even though they're wrong, but that's beside the point. One or the other. Dan mentions the idea of striking at Masquerade and Naga first before they can, since all they're doing is protecting the Infinity Core at this point, which everyone agrees is a good idea. Marucho, another one of the team members, asks how Alice is doing, which Runo gives the answer we know already. Then one of the funniest lines in the show is uttered.
Is it like a girl thing? Maybe she just might need to go see a doctor.
Yes, Joe, it is for sure a girl thing to just randomly sleepwalk and end up on a cliff, then passing out in your friend's bed. I wasn't kidding, by the way. This guy's name is actually Joe. We have all these Japanese names and some unique names in the show. Marucho, Shun, Runo, Rikimaru, Tatsuya. Even names like Dan and Julie are fine because the writing in these shows gives ample time to develop both of these characters, and it makes the audience care about them. Then there's Joe! He's important, sure. He developed the Bakugan website and he's the head admin of it. But beyond that, his partner Wavern is more important than Joe himself. He's literally just a guy who almost dies in the hospital from an unknown disease. At least tell us what the disease is! Anyways, Joe gets a message from Masquerade themselves, saying they want the Infinity Core and to meet them at Dome Stadium. Stupid name for an arena. You couldn't come up with anything better than Dome Stadium? Dan suggests he be the one to battle Masquerade, considering Drago, his partner Bakugan, just evolved literally 1 episode ago, and everyone is cautious but in agreement. The scene then changes to Runo's house, with her mom bringing food to Alice, but when she opens the door, Alice isn't there. Weird. Wonder if that's ever going to come into play at some point. Is it still a Chekhov's gun if the gun is pointed point blank in your face? At Dome Stadium, Masquerade and Dan stand face to face shit-talking each other. Marucho mentions that Masquerade is still ranked number 1, and that, in turn, Shun brings up because Dan beat him, Dan is ranked number 2. Meaning that this will be the greatest Bakugan battle to ever happen. Ranked number 1 versus ranked number 2.
Whoa, this is gonna be the ultimate showdown then!
Of Ultimate Destiny? God, I'm old. Dan, being the kind-hearted person that he is, tries to talk Masquerade down, asking how they ended up working for Naga, and that because both worlds are collapsing, they should be working together, not against each other. Masquerade replies,
I only take orders from Naga.
It'll become more clear later, but even from the early stages of this battle, Masquerade seems angrier than they normally do. Almost as if Dan gets in their way too much and they want him gone. More shit-talking ensues and they finally open the field. Normally, the field is just a standard white ground with the sky above them replaced with visages of Astroya. This field is another dimension, basically. But the cool thing about this episode is that it turns Dome Stadium into the Roman Colosseum especially. I thought this was the coolest thing as a kid. The Brawlers watch on intensely as the gate cards are set. Masquerade has the first throw and they send out
Bakugan Brawl! Hydronoid stand!
New battle recognized.
What? Hydronoid first? Everyone is shocked. Hell, I was shocked when I first saw this episode. So were my friends. Hydronoid stands and has the highest base power we've seen so far in the series, 550. The group remarks at how Hydronoid has evolved, and Dan sends out Drago.
Bakugan Brawl! Drago stand!
Drago has entered battle.
Whose power also stands at 550. At this point, we can guess how this is going to play out. A one-on-one battle. Masquerade is shocked at how Drago has also evolved and the battle starts. Standard anime shit-talking happens, I didn't think it would be this easy, etc, etc. Some ability cards are thrown about, and the first battle ends in a draw? This is an episode of firsts for the series. We've never seen a battle result in a draw before. Not like this. Dan and Masquerade throw out Hydronoid and Drago once again, and the same thing happens. Shit-talking, ability cards thrown, power rising and lowering. and ending in a draw. Except this time, the force of the blows is scuffing their faces and tearing at their clothing. They're really going at each other. Also, I want to say this is the edgiest name for an ability, and I am here for it!
Nice try, but not good enough. Fusion ability activate. Final demolition.
At this point, it's clear which way the story of the episode is going. A long, drawn-out, one-on-one fight between the two greatest players this game has ever seen. And it's at this point, Masquerade loses it, and has one of my favorite villain breakdown monologues.
That's it! You're really starting to get on my nerves, Dan! You may think you have a chance to beat me, but up till now, you've just been plain lucky. You're constantly getting in my way, Dan, and my patience is at an end. You are a thorn in my side, and I have had enough of you. But that all stops here and now. I'm going to destroy you! Do you hear me, Dan?
Dan is clearly trying to get under Masquerade's skin, as Shun says. And Dan says to fight fair and square. They both throw down their Bakugan launchers onto the ground and everyone is surprised. Masquerade has never done this before. Marucho remarks on how this is going to be the greatest Bakugan battle ever, as if it already wasn't at this point. Masquerade throws down another gate card, and the third battle commences. This time of a generic power-boosting gate card, Masquerade threw down a command card, Wall Lock, which negates Drago's power boost that he apparently had when entering the battle? This show is confusing sometimes. But now Hydronoid and Drago are on even power levels. Their fight is so intense that the field actually starts destabilizing and it ends in another draw. They both throw down another gate card, and the fourth battle, Jesus, it's the fourth battle? Starts. We see the state of the Colosseum and how much damage it's taken from this battle, showing how fiercely these two are battling. Dan and Drago, Masquerade and Hydronoid. They're so in sync with each other in this battle that they can feel the physical pain of their partner whenever one of them gets slashed, bitten, or hit. At this point, you can tell this is not just a battle for the fate of both Earth and Destroya. This is personal. Dan and Masquerade have been a thorn on each other's sides ever since episode 2. All resentment, all anger, all emotions have peaked at this point. Then, one of my favorite moments in the series happens. Dan starts laughing. Of course, Masquerade, being the way they are, asks, "What's so funny?" Dan replies simply, "This is fun." Because after all, this is a game.
It's not a game, it's my life.
Okay, that was way funnier than it should have been. Some more ability cards are played from both sides, and as Drago and Hydronoid hit each other, Dan plays one last ability card, and the screen turns white. We hear the sound of the field closing. Both Dan and Masquerade are lying on the ground. Masquerade reveals that they lost, and for some reason, it doesn't bother them. Dan won. He mentions that it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's how you play the game, and Masquerade mentions that they should have learned that lesson a long time ago. Wait, is Masquerade turning good? Is this the twist? Masquerade becomes the new addition to the Battle Brawlers lineup? That would be so cool. I mean, their design is perfect. That outfit is so cool! Dan offers Masquerade to team up and join the Battle Brawlers fight against Naga. Masquerade even agrees that they like the plan, that it's a good one. The rest of the Brawlers are eagerly waiting for them to accept the offer. But then, it happens. Masquerade refuses the handshake, stating that they don't think it would work out. They reach for their mask, exclaiming,
Later, Dan.
And they drop the mask onto the ground. Masquerade's normally blonde Super Saiyan hair drops down and turns orange. And in Masquerade's place stands Alice. What? But Masquerade's a guy! Their voice sounds masculine anyways! How could Masquerade be Alice? But then it hits you. Alice mentioned at the beginning of the episode that when she plays Bakugan, she doesn't feel like herself.
Well, I guess ever since I started playing Bakugan, it's like I don't know myself anymore.
She was laying in Runo's bed before she left to meet up with the other brawlers, but was gone when Runo's mom brought her soup. Everything lines up with Alice being Masquerade. The interesting thing is, Alice looks shocked, confused. She looks like she doesn't even know that the battle just took place. At this point, I'm going to dive into a little bit of episode 39, Masquerade Unmasked, to give a little more of an explanation. Alice outright has a breakdown here, saying she doesn't understand, asking what she was doing, and that she doesn't remember anything. The third and final antagonist of the series, Hal G, appears before all of them to explain everything. Hal G is Alice's grandfather, Michael. He was building and experimenting with teleportation technology and dimension travel when an accident with the machine occurred. When Naga tried to seize the Infinity and Silent Core back in episode 1, something the show calls a mega-dimensional nova happened, and it leaked through Michael's machine, spilling into the room and corrupting Michael and turning him into Hal G. Unfortunately, Alice was also in the room visiting Michael, and she got affected by it as well, turning her into Masquerade. The show then starts showing scenes of Masquerade that we've seen before, but with the added context of afterwards, they teleport away to another location, take off the mask, and become Alice again. The moments where Alice disappears from the group, she sneaks away and puts the mask on. Even when Alice is sleeping in Runo's bed, she jolts awake. Interestingly, note how her eyes look vacant. She puts on the mask and becomes Masquerade and teleports away. Obviously, Alice is distraught with this revelation and breaks down. Even after all of this, the Brawlers still mention that they're friends and nothing is going to change that. After everything Masquerade did, they still gave her a place to be. But the guilt of everything she did as Masquerade overwhelms her and she leaves with Hal G. Genuinely heartbreaking. I thought, well, I hoped that she would join the Brawlers and finish the attributes. Dan has Pyrus, Shun has Ventus, Julie has Subterra, Marucho has Aquos, and Runo has Chaos. It would be perfect. Alice could join with Darkus, and the wheel would be complete. That eventually does happen later, but after a lot more character growth from Alice. She is the best girl and the best character. I love her. I like to think of Alice and Masquerade as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde rather than two different beings in the same body. Alice has a tendency to repress her anger, and that anger is let loose as Masquerade. Alice is genuinely a good person, and Masquerade just does what they want, without fear, and without remorse in some cases. Like a split personality. Alice and Masquerade are one in the same. You could also look at Alice and Masquerade through the lens of a mental health disorder. It almost reminds me of depression. I would say bipolar disorder, but I do not know enough about that, so I will tackle the one I do know. Alice is the person, and Masquerade can be looked at like depression. All the times you want to lash out, all the times that intrusive thoughts come into your head, that is Masquerade. They just act on it. And Alice's friends' reactions mirror my own in a way. That despite everything that I've done to myself or them, they still call themselves my friends. That no matter how badly I feel about myself, they will always be behind me to support me. And the same goes for Alice and the Brawlers. And I genuinely think that that's beautiful. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and feel free to comment. I always encourage discussion about my videos in the comments. Do you have a different opinion than mine? Please share it. I love comments. Give them all to me. And I'll see you all the next time we dive into the narrative.